Hello and welcome to another 9 Steps to Future-Proofing Your Warehouse. My name is Daniel Mortimer. I am the event director for CMAT Australia. As you may know, if you've joined these sessions before, I'll be also joined by my co-hosts and session presenters, Jeff and Baz from the Fuzzy Logics team. The idea of this webinar is to really talk through the different progressions that have been made in the warehouse industry and really talk you through step-by-step processes for that. This week, you may have noticed, the session will be around packing and mobile automation, and we'll be joined by our guests from Cohesio, Riz and Tim. To start us off, though, we'll be giving an introduction. Jeff will be giving us an introduction into the packing side of things. So if I share my screen now, Jeff, you can take it away.
Thank you, Daniel. Hello and welcome back to session number 7 of our 9-part journey to a future-proof warehouse. It's great to have you join us for another week, and we're now on the home stretch on our journey to a future-proof warehouse. And this week, we're packing our bags. Let's jump straight into it, Daniel. Taking a look at where we are on our journey, the 7th step is adding value through a bespoke packing solution which can streamline your outbound operation. As always, we'll look briefly over the logistics, data, and technology requirements of this functional process, but this week with a focus on your final opportunity to add value to an order before it leaves the warehouse. Next slide, please. If picking was the heart of a fulfillment operation last week, packing are the hands. As a 6th functional process in the warehouse, packing typically occurs after the picking process. Quite obvious. Packing is about bringing all the moving parts together from picking and preparing the order into its shipping unit for transportation. As always, we want to equip ourselves with some best practice tools, such as minimizing unnecessary travel and touches, treating single line orders differently, removing non-value adding activities, and using technology to increase productivity. As we'll learn in the next slides, packing involves multiple different movements and confirmation processes, which usually occur sequentially. But the key to a future-proof packing process is the timing and running uncoupled processes in parallel. So first, let's understand these processes. Next slide, please. Last session, you'll remember there was a key focus on the impact of travel time on picking productivity. For packing, it's more about optimizing discrete processes in your packing area. There are 3 key physical processes that we've identified which are required to complete the packing process. Firstly, order consolidation is required. This can usually take the form of some sort of outsort process of pick assignments into discrete outbound orders in a holding location where the order waits until it is completed or consolidated. You can imagine, if you have an operation with multiple pick zones and a wide variance in SKU size and shape, there can be quite a coordination effort involved. As such, it pays to get your system to help guide the process. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Secondly, once the order is consolidated, it's now ready to be transferred into the shipping unit load. For smaller split case picked orders, the shipper is usually a carton or a satchel. But for larger orders, we could be looking at pallets or other ULDs. One of the questions you may have to ask yourself when designing your operation is whether you're happy to ship full case cartons without an outer carton. This can reduce the packing effort, but can mean potential damage to more sensitive product packaging, which can result in a perceived quality loss. And when fulfillment is all about customer service, it's important that you decide whether that trade-off is worth it. It all comes down to how much wear and tear the product will go through before getting to its destination. The third and final movement in packing is a sort for dispatch. Now, it's hard to look at packing and dispatch separately within the warehouse. And this is one of the parallel processes we mentioned previously in the last slide, which can be optimized. But for now, it suffices to say that once you finish packing, you'll need to perform some type of sort of the completed shipper before it can be dispatched. Sometimes it's to state, sometimes it's to carrier. It depends on your operation. We'll look at these points in a little more detail in the coming slides, but ergonomics and technology have a strong hand to play in this. Furthermore, Mobile automation and robotics, which we'll be looking at in the second half of the session, can truly revolutionize the way you design your packing process. But you need to make sure you have the right systems to enable this. Let's go to the next slide. When looking to optimize processes and increase accuracy, we're always looking for system-driven processes. Best practice packing processes are facilitated by the following system-enabled processes. As we mentioned earlier, order consolidation requires a coordination effort to reunite all the pick lines from different zones in your warehouse into that final shipper. Any good WMS system should be able to facilitate this process. And I know this is a growing requirement as end customers are getting increasingly weary of receiving multiple packages, possibly on different days, if you put them into different shippers. We haven't yet talked about the importance of accuracy in the packing process, but packing is indeed your final chance to make sure you've picked the order correctly. Most packing processes have some type of quality and accuracy checks. Furthermore, the order confirmation step usually flags a product that requires any additional rework or value-added services, which can then become additional workflows which you'll need to design into your operation. Finally, the physical act of packing an order usually requires the selection of a shipper unit and requires a decision around size and weight. Best-in-class systems can use available data to determine these ahead of time and increase packing productivity. I keep talking about parallel processes which can be optimized in packing. Part of the dispatch process is generating the consignment details for the shipper label. A lot of times, this can only be done once the shipper has been selected and closed. Using system-driven functionality and with good data, you can save a lot of time with pre-consignment of orders to shippers, reducing your overall effort. Let's go to the next slide. Now, let's take a brief look over the humble order packing station and what it needs to provide to a functional warehouse. First of all, you'll need to have your cartons or satchel consumables readily available in an ergonomic format for the packer to be able to choose and build their shipper as they're packing. By understanding the volumes of each type of shipper, each size of shipper, it is possible to get a step ahead here and prepare ahead of time. Holding semi-assembled cartons of your fastest moving sizes can save you a lot of time. You also have to think about void fill. There are a myriad of options here, and you'll need to decide what is best for your product profile. It all comes down to fragility and presentation. Do not underestimate how much room some void-filled solutions can take to hold reasonable amounts of consumables. I remember walking into a warehouse where they had a huge bag of void fill hanging from the ceiling, taking up quite a lot of cubic area. And if that hadn't been designed for, it could have caught you off guard. It's always a balance between replenishment and having the right amount at the pack station. Packing is also all about reducing the time it takes to complete an order. Carton closing systems can be a great addition to a packing area, as they can save you 30 seconds to 1 minute per carton. And when you multiply that out, you can see that there's a relatively high productivity gain to be had there, and quite an easy business case to build for carton closing systems. Finally, make sure you leave room on your packing bench for a user terminal. It is often a requirement for you to interrogate your system to complete an order. Accuracy, errors, exceptions, simple things like needing to print an invoice or a packing slip need to be accounted for in this area. Let's go to the next slide, please. Now, onto the more shiny and fun stuff. Hopefully by now, you're getting a bit of an idea about how to optimize your packing process, and technology is definitely here to help. The most effective way of reducing your packing effort is to pick directly into your shipper if you can. Furthermore, using technology such as pick to light can increase the productivity of your outsort process. And coupled with this, using system-driven functionality can also aid in ensuring you pack your shipper optimally. For example, products, you want to try to have your heavy items on the bottom of a shipper. and it also helps to increase the accuracy of outbound orders. Now, the level of automation in packing that we're seeing in the industry is increasing rapidly. There are many packaging on demand and automated packaging solutions on the market, which can mean that an order does not need to be touched at all before it goes out the door. It's all about building the business case and making sure it aligns with your product and business profile. Remember, packing is your last opportunity to add value to your customer's order. Use it wisely. And speaking of technology, we'll go to the next slide, please, Dan. Speaking of technology, I'll now rope in Riz and Tim back into the conversation for some of their insights into packing and also how their exciting suite of solutions can help. Riz, Tim, welcome. How are you?
Very good, Jeff. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to be part of this exciting conversation, and to CMAT, to yourselves as well for hosting. Yeah, really looking forward to the next half an hour or so of discussions. Tim?
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, CMAT and Baz. Appreciate you putting on the event and appreciate the opportunity to talk through it. So I guess one of the things that Riz and I were talking about in the background and having a look at in a bit more detail was, like you said, how do you move items picked out of the pick face to the pack bench? And we were talking about some of the trends in automation and how that could potentially look. So one of the things that we've been talking through in a little bit of detail is what you see on the right there, being the auto sort, and how that solves a couple of problems in the distribution center and getting goods to the pack bench.
Absolutely. And have you guys found that, like, you know, with when we went through those logistics processes, there's a sort required basically at the beginning to make sure that you get your order consolidated and ready to be shipped. And then there's also a sort required after. So these solutions are quite flexible and you can use them for both.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen at the start, at the end, like you mentioned, and I think you've had a particular slide spoke about single line orders, and how do we manage that type of processes. We've seen a significant take up on this particular technology for requirements like that, especially in e-commerce.
Absolutely. Look forward to seeing more.
Absolutely. I think, Daniel, if you can take it to the next slide and play the introduction video.
Thanks, Jeff. So mobile automation, one of the topics that I wanted to cover off was creating diversity, flexibility, and scalability in your operational workflows with mobile automation. One of the things we found is that it's absolutely evident there's been a need for diversity and flexibility in operational workflows well before COVID hit. The need for faster deliveries and creating seamless transitions within workflows to allow for faster deliveries was not alien to our supply chain world prior to COVID. What COVID has done is it has converted this need to an absolutely essential requirement. Let me loop Riz in here, and we can talk about the challenges in a little bit more detail and what you've come across firsthand.
Absolutely. Gents, jump in whenever you think it's necessary, Jeff and Baz. I think COVID opened our eyes to some of the challenges and gave a big focus around supply chain. I think a lot of the time people look at supply chain as a last resort. They didn't really focus on there. They're more into retail and things like that. A lot of the shiny stuff. When COVID hit, that was the engine that was pushing all the products out. to the market and keeping the service levels up. I think the scalability and adaptability of technology and operations sped up due to COVID. And I'm interested to hear from Jeff and Bas on your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I guess for us, we throw the flexibility and scalability around a lot, but could you just maybe, for those who might not be as familiar with mobile automation, why is mobile automation different in terms of flexibility and scalability? I
think the nature of how easy to deploy and move around. So it's a true dynamic technology. I've got a lot of respect for the mainstream automation systems, ASRS, could be good Superson. There's definitely a place for all of those different technologies within our ecosystem. Where we see AMR being, or any of these dynamic technologies being key is the changing nature of supply chain. If you have smaller DCs that doesn't really have the throughput or capacity to put a large-scale automation system, that's where we see an AMR system that at the right investment dollar value, and also being adaptable to different times and needs. So if you think about a facility that has maybe 20 people, how can we improve that facility without spending a lot of money and putting in a large scale AMR large scale automation technology? I think that's where this fits really, really well.
I think there's one of the things that yeah. Sorry, Bas, I was just going to say.
Go to
you go. What I was going to say was one of the things that we've noticed over the last couple of months, especially coming out of, or somewhat coming out of COVID, is that from a 3PL perspective with this mobile automation, when you have a look at e-com orders and how they've changed over time, this gives 3PLs the opportunity to put our technology in for a 3+2+2 year contract. If you're having a look at a 6-month lead time, that's something that you're probably not going to achieve with a traditional automation set, whereas with the flexible automation that we offer, it means that you can be up and running in a 3 to 6 month time frame and get quite a good outcome from the customer point of view.
So that was basically my question, Tim, as well, is we find typically with large-scale automation, and especially I'll call it traditional automation, to get up and running probably takes you 12 to 18 months from the time you sign a contract all the way through to getting the supplies from overseas, getting it installed, commissioned, tested, integrated, and go live. What do you guys typically see as a project duration for these types of mobile automation systems?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my extended team will kill me if I really tell you guys how quickly that we can deploy. Where we work to is generally that 4 to 6 months period in a standard environment, unless there's special requirements like what we did for Galipo Foods in a temperature controlled environment. That took us a little bit longer than normal because it's not a standard temperature environment. But from our perspective, we see that 4 to 6 month mark, and that heavily relies on the team. And we got such a good team at Cohesio, and very well trained, and they know what they're doing, and they know where they need to focus on. And our reliance on any of the technology providers is not great, because our team actually knows what they need to do. We've got several robot whisperers in our team, so they know what they need to do in terms of configuration and setup and design of this equipment. So yeah, for us, it's a faster, generally 6 months time frame is normal.
But in saying that as well, Bas, a couple of the other things that have been happening over the last week is a couple of additional commitments from some larger organisations to go live before Black Friday and Christmas. So if you think that we're at the end of July now, we're talking about going live before Black Friday on the 27th of November. That's a pretty short lead time from getting the green light on the contract to rolling that solution out.
And then from the integration side, because this is usually where we see projects and things, I won't say fall over, but at least you run into difficulties, integration with IT systems, WMS vendors, just trying to get the right people on board who understand exactly what's required to get this up and running. Is there a big difference between, again, traditional automation versus the mobile automation components?
I believe so. When we originally looked at dynamic automation, dynamic technology, we didn't want to have a bottleneck in terms of integration. So the idea was start to finish, it has to be dynamic. So our team has spent a lot of time developing the right integration layers that provides extended customers the ability to integrate into our systems very, very quickly and easily. So originally, yes, there was a concern, but in the recent projects and what we've done further developed within our system, we can integrate into a existing system with no time. And we made that for all of our technology, not only AMR, we've done that with Android Voice, we've done that with some of the mobility products that we work on for click and collect and so on and so forth. So our general integration timelines would be 4 weeks to 8 weeks compared to could take 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, I guess that also raises a question. You know, we usually get to see exactly like on your background and my background, you see it's usually robots and shelves or robots and some kind of carrier. And Baz has now asked about kind of a little bit more about the system side, but is that the 3 moving parts that are required to make mobile automation happen?
Yeah, I believe so. So there's the hardware perspective, that's one part. The software and system is another part. But I think one of the keys is the know-how as well, Jeff. The understanding the customer's requirements and understanding what sort of environment that the product's going into, what product are we trying to move around, and what goals are we trying to achieve. Us at Cohesio will be the first to put our hand up and tell our customers if something doesn't suit them. And that's always been the case. So in this scenario, yes, the other 2 components are important, but if it doesn't hit the goals that the customer needs, yeah, we wouldn't look at any technology.
Excuse my ignorance here a little bit, but just we've talked a lot about the flexibility of the solution, and also I guess we understand the scalability in terms of being able to add additional hardware. Where's the diversity come into play?
Diversity come into play in how different AMR technologies can work within an environment. So even if it is, if you have a large-scale automation system already implemented at a particular site, how can we use AMR or this dynamic automation to drive some of the other requirements? It could be e-commerce. It could be another requirements. I think that's where the diversity will come in to commingle different technologies in under one roof.
Okay, so diversity of applications, diversity of industries. It sounds like you can pretty much use this anywhere.
Absolutely. Originally, a lot of people thought AMR was for e-commerce. I think we busted that myth by putting AMR into a food service manufacturer. We put it into a 3PL environment. We've now working on a cross-dock type solution that is not traditionally used AMR. And we did that by looking at data and getting the right data sets and proving to the customers, our partners, that by implementing this technology, there's a good ROI and benefit.
And the cross-dock implementation is quite an interesting one as well. When you're talking about full pallet movements off the back of a truck into a buffer location before they're sent out again as well, it's something that we don't usually see, and it's usually quite MHE intensive, space intensive as well. So it gives you the ability to free up dock space and real estate in that end of the distribution center as well.
Cool. So we've got our first question from Julian to the team, and this is one that's come up with myself quite a number of times. I'll give you the background. So Jeff and I go to the US once a year or once every 2 years. So we sort of alternate to
not anymore, I hope.
Well, no, I went to the last one. I just got back just in time from Modex. I don't think ProMat's on this year or next year. But what we've noticed in the US is scaling up and scaling down. Yeah. And especially with mobile automation, because it's not fixed to the ground, it's not fixed to infrastructure. The question becomes, if you talk Black Friday, for instance, is a good example. Black Friday, Christmas, or some form of peak season. How easy is it for one of your customers to scale up for peak season and then scale down again when it's a normal average day?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had this experience during the COVID times. We had a customer that we implemented an AMR solution for them to manage their Christmas period for one of their new customers. COVID hit, they had a growth of 400%. So what they needed is support from us to two parts. One is the original business case was around having one shift, from going 2 shifts to 1 shift. So they had the flexibility to go back to 2 shifts and have increase the throughput that they needed. But what Cohesio did was we provided them with additional robots to increase the throughput and open up another workstation for them. So basically a hole in the wall, open up another workstation, and they can start processing some of the single line orders to get the throughput up. And we provided them with short-term robots until they had to get through that hump.
So basically what you're saying is once a system is up and running, to basically expand a system, it's not like in a traditional environment where you have to go through the whole setup of, I'm extending the system, I'm building something, I'm testing it, I'm making sure that whatever I add to my existing environment, it's not going to interfere with everything I've implemented before. This is almost like it's there. The only thing I need is just more performance. I just add more robots. Correct. And they automatically take over I'll call it the language and the programming involved from what's already in place from the previous ones.
Yeah, 100%. And we made the integration layer flexible enough that we can segregate some of those focused areas. So single line orders, like I mentioned. Imagine if you're picking shoes. A lot of people don't buy 2 pairs of shoes. They generally buy a pair of shoes. And how do we manage all those single orders coming into one location and getting that throughput done? And then all the other items that are a top and a pair of shoes, how do we manage those particular orders? So we can easily configure those rules within our system and make it adaptable and add more robots to manage the throughput requirements.
And
so on the back of that, sorry, Tim.
Sorry, Baz, I was just going to say from a
no, because I've got plenty of questions for you guys. So
yeah, no problems. I was going to say from a physical edition as well. One of the things that we've been doing a lot of work with our customers on is planning out the next 5 years. So you can build the system to accommodate the next 12 to 24 months, and then add to it in 12 monthly intervals, or as you see increases in volume as well. So from a flexible point of view as well, it means that you're not investing for year 5 and what's going to be the peak in 5 years' time, but you're investing for the next 12 months. So it gives you a little bit more accuracy in terms of what it is that you're actually forecasting for.
And that's a good segue into the question I was going to ask Tim. The same thing, talking to a lot of the vendors overseas in the US, they actually provide a service where it's like a pay-per-click. So it's almost like when I may have 1,000 order lines I'm doing today, and I can get someone like you guys in, like Cohesio, and say, look, I only want to pay you for the amount of order lines I do. No upfront investment. I want to pay a fixed amount. So I'll basically get rid of all my capital investment of buying equipment and buying robots and doing all the work.
Yep.
And I'm just going to pay you based on the performance I have. So there'll be a minimum of 500 for all I care, and there'll be a certain amount per click. As I grow and my business grows, I just pay you per the click. So if I have a peak, all I'm paying you is a fixed amount per order line, and you take care of everything else. Is that something that you see happening in the future here in Australia for, especially for mobile automation?
Yeah, I believe so. We've had this conversation with several of our customers. I think the next stage of mobile automation for us here is platform as a service, more than per click. We've seen more adoption around the robot, the software, the integration, implementation, and ongoing support. You pay X number of dollars a month, and off you go. You get that service. I think we're getting more and more projects around that part rather than cost per click. But yeah, it's not far off. I think 24 months ago, when we originally brought AMR technology, it almost felt like it was bleeding edge for our industry. Now it's in that taking that curve, and now everybody knows about the technology. So they started looking into how they can utilize it and how they can adapt the technology. Another 12 months time, we might be doing something like that, doing cost per click. But right now, the biggest focus for us has been platform as a service. And also you implement the minimum required robots that you need for today, and have the flexibility that you can add another 10 robots when you need to increase your throughput.
The other thing as well,
it comes back to.
Sorry, Baz, every time.
Yeah, the two of you
every time. I should just feel like a secret,
read each other's mind.
Riz talks first, then Tim, and then either Jeff or I ask a question.
Yes.
We might need to put hands up.
The only thing that I was going to add to that was some of the 3PLs that we're working with are working off similar models. So we'll be providing them with a solution, but they'll be going to their end users saying, this is essentially what it's going to cost per movement, per item shipped, or however that ends up looking. So we've worked with them pretty closely on that. So it's not entirely off the table.
Yep.
I think that sort of feeds into, automation is always perceived as being, I think to Jeff's, or the session we had last time, to be flexible, but also to be really expensive. So there's always almost like a barrier to entry for automation that's still, I think, in a lot of people's minds, and especially probably the smaller to mid-sized businesses who'd like to get into automation because they see the benefits. It's just that barrier of, I'm needing to invest $1 million to $1.5 million to $2 million just to get into automation in the first place. And, a lot of their capital is tied up either in, in just investments, shares, their building, just cash flow in general. So if we can lower that threshold for those type of businesses, I think there's a huge market that could really benefit from this type of technology. We just need to lower that barrier.
I also think that that the more we can reduce the crystal ball gazing that we have to do in forecasting, the better. Because if I knew what was going to happen in 10 years, I wouldn't be on this seminar.
No, I think that's right. But at the same time, I think what AMR's brought to the table is that entry into automation, and the cost is not as expensive as traditional automation. I'll use Gallipo Foods as an example. They've been a long-term partner of Cohesio. We've implemented voice for them. They hit the roof with their growth. They're not a huge company. They're a fairly large company, but then the next logical step for them was to look at other options. Either they increase the manpower, open up get more DC space, or look at technology. So the ROI stacked up, and they implemented technology, and they're going through their stage 2, which is a testament that don't have deep pockets to get something like AMR into your operation and get a good ROI. That's the most important part. I think worst case scenario I've seen is just over 24 months payback for some of our customers. So that showcases for automation, especially for something in our industry, that's pretty quick ROI.
Yeah, I think just while we're comparing to some of the traditional systems, I come from the traditional system backing. I think all of us on the call do.
Yes.
And I remember when I first saw Kiva robots all that time ago, I struggled with, traditional systems are all about using the full height of the roof and all this. And I guess it's kind of transitioning into that second topic that you guys had. But how do you maximize the use of a fulfillment space with a system that to the naked eye doesn't look to utilize that full cube?
I think there's a couple of different ways of looking at it. One is that with flexible automation, you really only need 3 meters worth of clearance. So you can get quite creative in where you actually put the solution. So when you're talking about being agile with customers and placing distribution centers and dark stores and things like that where customers are, it gives you the ability to put solutions like this in supermarkets, in car parks, in office space, in all sorts of things like that as well. So I'd almost, flip the answer on its head and say you can put it into a distribution center and you will get quite a dense pick face and a fairly high pick rate, but you can also get flexible in where it actually goes. To the point that we're looking at concrete messes and multiple levels in distribution centers. The fire restrictions over here mean that can become quite an expensive proposition, but there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't have a look at multi-level implementations over here.
Yeah, we got customers who got traditional racking on one side and then automation AMR on the other side. Yes, there's space above that they are planning on utilizing at a later stage. It could be a mezzanine or another shape or form. But when we ran the numbers, when you look at the throughput requirements and the storage requirements, AMR most likely comes on top. You don't have the walkways, you don't have the density that you can store your products is the key. The key thing for a lot of our customers is getting the cross-stocking right. So you can actually touch a product once. When you receive it, you can put it straight into a pickable location. That has shown a significant input throughput and less touch and less cost for the customers. So because of that, it's actually worked out well. But I would go back to that traditional automation. There are certain things that will fit in that traditional automation where you can use the height and everything else. I think the biggest thing for customers today is, am I going to spend 10, 12, $30 million and put a fixed automation system that may or may not give me the benefit in another 5 years because my business might change? Or should I go for a $2, $3, $4 million investment that I can turn on and off? I can change requirements. I can throw a couple extra robots and get more throughput. What would I look at? I think the uncertainty in the market drives the results around automation to be more dynamic.
And the other thing as well is really maximizing the cube. If you have a look at your profile picture behind there, you can see how the individual pick locations are custom made for the products that are put in there. So when you compare that to a traditional goods to person system, as an example, you've got the tote, which is a set size, but are you going to maximize the cube of every single tote that you're using? Probably not. Whereas with an AMR solution, you can build the racking and the shelving unit to custom fit what it is that you're putting in there. And that's flexible in the sense that it's cardboard or plastic, so you can move that around as need be as well.
Absolutely, that's a real benefit. It's like having a mobile pick shelf that you can customize to whatever you want.
Are there any industries or parts that would not be suitable for mobile automation in your experience so far?
Yeah, so there are uglies, obviously. There are products that generally everybody don't like to handle. So that type of products normally don't go into AMR and mobile technology. We do have, but in saying that, we have other customers who are working on things like panels, vehicle parts, and things like that in a moving scale. So they can move one location to another to complete a particular task for kitting and things like that, but not for our traditional warehouse functions. We work on a couple of algorithms to pick what best suits them. So anything that doesn't go to normal automation doesn't get generally picked on a mobile automation as well. It's majority of the same rules apply.
We've had a question just come through about the mobile shelving. I'm just conscious that we do want to talk about some of your other workflow automation solutions as well. But the question itself is, how come the shelves that we see on the pictures, and I guess the shelves that you're deploying, seem to only have two sides of storage?
Yeah, so from our perspective, when we look at our customers' needs and when we look at our numbers around throughput, we believe that's the best fitting solution for our customers and the problems that lies in front of us. We've had look at multiple occasions to do all 4 sides, but the time to turn the robot and several other operational requirements doesn't really warrant having 4 sides to this to the workstations. Sorry, Rex.
I was going to say as well, Riz, having a look at the shelves behind you as well. If you can pull out that shelving unit from the complete depth and pick from any location in there, it means that you're maximising it regardless. So there really is there hasn't been a reason for us to consider having a look at a 4-sided implementation because we simply don't see a return in doing so at this point.
Yeah, agreed. And I remember I played around a little bit in CAD and 3D. I was actually trying to do a 3D kind of 4-sided shelf, but you actually end up eating away your own real estate.
Yeah.
You know, when you get to the corner, you can't really have an angled location. So if you have on one side, you basically eat the location of the other side. So we have had another question come through. Anonymous. Thank you to Anonymous. There's a number of AMR providers in the market. How do your AMRs differentiate from the others?
I think the biggest differentiator for Cohesio is our team. I'm biased, but I will say it. We got the best team. We got the best knowledge, and the in-depth knowledge our teams got and what they go through to help our customers. I think that's what differentiates Cohesio over everybody else. And our local support as well. We don't rely on some of our vendors to do majority of the heavy lifting. So majority of the heavy lifting is done by us. Galipo Foods I was talking about before, over the COVID period, we actually went live virtually. There was not a single person on site from Cohesio, and we went live, and it was a successful implementation. To have that level of confidence to do something virtually without a single person present, only a couple of people from the customer's end, is a testament to the team that that deploys this technology. So I think the largest difference is that, and the selected partners that we work with the best, and we work with people who have proven track record and technology. So I think that those are the key things. Tim, anything else?
Another question. I think Jeff's on mute. How does the robot know where the center of gravity is on the pick face in order to avoid fallovers? From Peter Stanley.
Sorry, but sorry.
If you look at the shelf. That's okay. If you look at the shelf, how does a robot know where the center of gravity is to avoid any fallovers of the shelf itself?
Okay. So there's certain sensors that are built into the system. It'll know when it lifts, if it is out of balance or not, and if it is heavy or not. It'll drop the weight and sense alarm. So there's several technologies that put into the robot that senses all of that. And it'll also come back down to the training as well. Our team spends a bit of time teaching our customers on how to best fill the shelf, where to put the product and how to put the product. So there's the different algorithms that goes with it. So that all will come into that.
Mm. Yeah. Now, I, as I said before, I came into the AMR world a little bit of a skeptic, and I did have my mind changed when we caught up in Chicago last year.
Yeah.
And the key kind of component for me, the piece that was missing was more around workflow automation than necessarily trying to replace traditional systems with traditional ASRS systems with a kind of shelving unit based delivery engine. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on how not just the robots that we're seeing in the back of our profiles at the moment, but some of the other solutions that we've alluded to, how you're addressing kind of the whole more workflow automation as opposed to having to automate everything?
Yep, understand. So for us, Cohesio, we focused on technology that can manage all those different workflows. We're currently working on one of the largest e-commerce customers in Australia, implementing an AMR technology, but we are also looking into what you mentioned around packing and after packing sortation. How can we manage the sortation or a pre-sort before that particular product goes to someone like an Australia Post for a shipment? So we are using a tabletop type AMR technology to do such sortation. That'll come back down to the serviceability of our customers. How can we quickly get a parcel after picking? You can pick a parcel in 2 hours and ship it to a Australia Post location. And how can it get to Jeffrey in time? So if you can do a pre-sort, most likely that process is going to get faster from Australia Post perspective. So we started looking into a lot of those tech, and something like a Locus robotics. We started looking into that technology because we have customers who got existing facilities, existing setups. They don't have the capacity or capability to put something like an AMR at this stage. So what they would look at something like a Locus system in their different level mezzanine flows. How can we optimize and reduce walking time for some of those operations? So we started looking into those different technologies and look at the best fitting technology for our customers.
Well, what is the key difference there? Sorry, Tim. What is the key difference there between the AMRs, the shelving units, and the Locus, and I guess the Fetch as well?
Key differences are the real estate it uses. The key difference are how the algorithm works. So Locus and Fetch both are more of a cooperative robot type technology. So you basically set the parts of where the people are, and it'll follow you, or it'll direct a person to a particular area, and then you pick into the orders. Versus a Geek Plus type technology, and also a order sort type technology is more focused around goods to person type operations.
Okay. Tim, were you going to add something?
Just on your previous point. So in terms of at the pick phase, moving to dispatch as well, and the technology used to make that happen. So we've been, like Riz alluded to as well, we've been playing around with a couple of different opportunities there. So one, using the tabletop sorter, which works really well from an e-com point of view. If you're picking directly to a shipper and then out to a stillage, it makes a lot of sense. But if you're picking to route, and as an example, and you're building to a full pallet, there's no reason why you can't have a full pallet location onto a moving bot who then takes that to a dispatch area. So there's a couple of different opportunities across the vendors that we work with.
Now, a question for you, because I've seen the tabletop ones before, again, back in the US in 2018, so 3 years ago now, or 2.5 years ago. And what they advertised at the time is, talk about mobile and flexible automation. They were mentioning the fact that you can build the table for sortation. Once you finish picking, you build the table for sortation in your dispatch area. You put the robots up and you start sorting everything. At the end of your sortation phase, or almost your packing phase, at the end of the day, you just basically pack up the table again, pack the robots, and you can use the floor for something else. Is that the same type of technology that you guys are using now?
It is very similar, but operationally, a lot of the customers that we currently talk to, that flexibility is available. You can actually do that. But what we're seeing is the utilization of the equipment within that 24-hour, or operationally, if you look at operation hours of say 12 hours a day, during those hours, pick and pack and sortation happens, and there's nobody in the DC to take it out and do something else. So what we're seeing is the pick is definitely there, the packing is definitely there, and then going into the sortation definitely can be achieved. And also this particular solution has 2 levels as well. So the top can be used for product sortation for picking, and the bottom can be used for sortation of the completed parcels. So that flexibility is available with the robots. And by adding more robots during peak periods, you can actually increase the sortation from anything from 1,500 parcels to an hour to 20,000 parcels to an hour. So it depends on how much effort and throughput you want to put through your system, and it can adapt to it.
I think if the flexibility of being able to move the tabletop was a consideration, we'd probably weigh up the different vendors that we have. So both Geek and AutoSort offer a similar solution in terms of sorting, but Geek essentially offer a standalone solution. So if you needed that real estate, you'd simply move the bots out of the way, but you'd still have the QR codes there. So you could still function a sort function without having to physically pick up a piece of fixed infrastructure or somewhat fixed infrastructure.
It seems time flies when we're having fun, and
Yeah.
maybe Daniel I think's popped back up on the screen to moderate us.
Well, no, I was just gonna.
But I'll tell her to shut up.
Yeah, it was a great conversation, guys. I was watching vigilantly, but yeah, really interesting. So thanks so much. I mean, is there any other thoughts that you'd like to add, either Riz, Tim, Jeff, or Baz, just before we do wrap up?
Maybe round table final thoughts.
I for one, I guess I'll start since I started, and then I can shut up. But I for one, I'm super excited about what I think one of the key things there was, they're not exclusive. You can use traditional automation if you already have it. You can use mobile, and vice versa. And also, it's changing from a designer's point of view. DC design, it changes the way we can actually imagine how systems are going to be. I'm really excited about that. So yeah, thanks for your time today, guys.
No, thanks, Jeff, Baz, Dan, and the extended teams. I think from my perspective, it's an exciting time to be in supply chain. Things are changing, and a lot of these cool things that we saw in America and in Asia, in China, is coming to Australia. And yeah, really good to be part of that. And thanks again for the opportunity. And if anybody else got any other questions, yeah, shoot it through to us offline.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciate your time today, Riz and Tim. It is really interesting to understand what the future looks like. I think when everyone now imagines a warehouse of the future, I think AMRs are definitely a part of that. So it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on this particular subject. Next week, we will move into the next stage and the last stage before the wrap-up session in the 9th, which is next we'll be looking at the WMS system and talking about how that can be utilized in your warehouse of the future. So please join us in a couple of weeks' time when we're talking about that. Again, thank you to my co-hosts, Jeff and Baz, and also to our special guest this week, Riz and Tim. Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time, and take care.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, guys.
Yes.